Hi, this is Ed. I hope you're doing well. Spring is coming real soon. We're doing some mulch jobs in the south. We're still plowing snow in the north. But today we're going to talk about how do you set yourself up for a really successful first week of the year with your equipment. So first off, as much as it's a good idea to put your equipment away with everything in ship-shape condition, oftentimes you end up putting it away and you move on to the next thing in the winter, and that means that your equipment isn't ready for spring. Now, that first week is, if you're going to have problems, you're going to find them that first week, and that's also the week that you have new jobs, you may have new employees, a lot of other things going on. So now is the time to get in front of the equipment maintenance that you need to have done for that first week. So first off, just the fact of cleaning the machine lets you see the entire machine from every perspective. It makes some of the other work easier and to do. Also, you want to get oil residue off the machine that could collect dust and that kind of thing. So start by cleaning off the mower. I don't always recommend that you regularly wash the machine with water because it can get into some of the bearings and that kind of thing, but to do it occasionally or seasonally is not that big of an issue. Also, if you wash the machine when it's hot and it cools down, some of those parts will suck water in. So if the machine's sitting cold and you just wash it and let it dry like that, you have less chance of creating issues. Now, the next thing to do is check your oil. Maybe you changed it already, but make sure your oil is fresh for the start of the year. Start that cycle off. Also, right now you may not be so busy, so to get it out of the way is a great thing to do. The next thing is to inspect the engine fins. So inside here, especially around the cylinder heads where the heat's generated, you don't want debris buildup to be causing the engine to get really hot. Now, the engines are all built differently. Some have caps that you can open up easily and just look right in there. But one trick you can do is if you get compressed air on a sort of curved tube and you blow compressed air up through the bottom of the fins, you'll see some dust floating up, telling you need to dig deeper, inspect closer. The other thing is, every now and then there could be an issue inside the engine where there could be just the slightest amount of oil seep coming out of one of the components in there, and that's collecting dust. If you have any kind of oil seepage up inside here, you want to get that taken care of because that's where the dust is going to accumulate much, much quicker. Now, the next thing is just to overall go around the machine, look for loose parts, especially where there's a lot of vibration. The engine has a lot of fasteners on it, and that's where most of the vibration's happening, so inspect there. If you have a bolt that's come loose or fallen out of a critical component, it could lead to another part failing. It could lead to something cracking or breaking, so you want to limit that damage as much as possible by just doing a general inspection for missing parts. Now, sometimes it can be hard to chase down small random pieces, and it can be frustrating to find them. But in case you're not aware, it's actually quite easy to find parts for your mower. If you go to our website, parts.wrightmfg.com, and you enter in the serial number. So this machine back there in the corner of the frame, there's a serial number, 6-digit number with 2 letters typically. You put that in there and it'll load that web page with all the parts that belong to your specific serial number. Now, for any reason that serial number is missing, you can also put things like the serial number of a pump or engine in there and you'll get the machine as well. So look up the parts, make a parts list of the things that you need, get them on order. If you keep the machine completely updated, this machine could last many, many years. Most machines are put out of commission because some of that small stuff wasn't kept up with and the machine deteriorates. But if you keep it maintained, this machine will last a really long time. It'll last longer than a couple engines. So we've got the miscellaneous parts. The next thing to do is look at your electrical components. That your battery cables are tight on the starter, on the engine. Those are elusive issues that can bother you later in the season. The other thing to check is the connection at the key or the platform switch or the clutch. Just visually check that there's not a lot of corrosion or dirt, that it's clean and well plugged in. It's worth just the second that it takes to do that. Now, the next thing, and I would say of all the things I'm talking about, this is the number one biggest thing that you can do to set yourself up for that successful first week. It's to address your drives. I recommend that you take the belts off. It only takes a minute, but when you take the belt off, you can really inspect it closely, and you can check the spindle and idler bearings, which is something it's difficult to do with the belt on the machine. So you take the belt off the deck drive, off the pump drive, and we have some videos about how to do that, especially the pump drive because it's a lot tighter. You can look them up. When you take the belts off, you spin the spindle, and if it has a kind of a rough noise to it, then that's telling you that that spindle's on its way out and you need to get in front of that issue so it doesn't bother you in the peak of spring. Same thing with your idler pulleys. If your idlers have some roughness or crunchiness in the bearing, you only have so many hours left in that idler pulley, and you want to go ahead and address it. Now, the belts, you want to take the belt off and flex it backwards. If there's cracks or check marks in it, then that's a belt you want to go ahead and replace. If the belt's in great condition, you can put it back on. But if there's some cracking on it, even if it's minimal, I recommend that you put a new belt on the mower. And then take that belt that you took off, that maybe is still serviceable but doesn't have quite as much life in it, and keep that belt on hand. Keep it in your toolbox, in your truck or on your trailer, so that belt can be there to solve an emergency situation. But go ahead and put the new belt on there, because that new belt will get you all the way through the year in most cases. And again, for your belt part numbers, you can either go to the parts site, or many of our mowers have a decal. It's oftentimes on the deck cover, giving you the popular parts for the machine. You can look up your belt part number there as well. Now, the next thing is that we all struggle with flat tires, or tires that have a slow leak. And at this point in the year, if you look at your mower fleet, probably a significant amount of them are sitting on their rims, on one corner at least, due to a slow leak. So if you know that slow leak is there, and filling the tire is not going to make it go away. So if you have slow leaks at this point in the year, take the time to go ahead and pull those tires off, or if maybe you don't have to pull it off if you put a plug in it, but go ahead and address whatever that leak is and get in front of that problem so it's not plaguing your crews at the start of the year. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about is your caster wheel. We have two styles of caster wheels. Some have a taper roller bearing. And if it has a taper roller bearing, you just want to be sure that the axle is snug. If the wheel can wobble at all, it'll start damaging the seals. And in terms of torquing it up, you want this to be tight for a taper roller bearing. You want this to be tight enough where if you spin the wheel, it'll spin maybe once or twice and then slow down and stop. If it spins for a long time, probably needs a little more tension. If it only spins like maybe half a turn, it's probably too much tension on the bearing. But torque that taper bearing. Now, the machines that don't have a grease fitting, they have deep groove ball bearings on them. Last a pretty long time. Those bearings are replaceable. Just for inspection there, just wiggle the tire. If you feel any movement in the bearing or you spin the wheel and it sounds crunchy, that's a bearing that might need adjusting, replacing. And then your tires, you know that your tires are getting pretty worn out if you see kind of a bulge in the center. If this tread has just a nice even curvature to it, means there's a lot of rubber left. But if there's this bulge in the center, what happens is the center is soft, and so the tire wears less there, and so it kind of actually sticks out on the top side. And if you have that bulge in your tread of the front tire and you have a bearing issue, you may as well replace the entire wheel assembly rather than just messing around with the bearings. Now, the other thing is this housing right here. If the fork is tight and there's no residue under here, I would just skip it. If you have some residue under here, then what you want to do is take a flathead screwdriver, pop this cap off, snug the top here, make sure there's no movement, and fill it up with some more grease. Fill it up with as much grease as you can put in there, put the cap on. If you put Loctite on this cap when you put it in, it'll also help stick it in there even better. So the other thing is your blades, right? That's something you deal with all the time, but while you're at this point, go ahead and get the blades in there, sharpen your stock of blades, throw away your bad blades, and get any new replacements you need in for the year. So those are some of the top issues to look at when you're setting your equipment up for the start of a good year. Just pulling the equipment out and starting the engine, confirming the fuel's in good shape is another item. But chances are you would have discovered that on your way as you went through this. There are more in-depth maintenance procedures you can find in the manual. For example, changing the fuel filter every so often. But overall, those are some of the things you can do to set yourself up for a good start of the year. Again, the number one thing I would say you can do is take your belts off, inspect your bearings, and put fresh belts on there, or put the belt back on if it's in actually really, really good shape. So hopefully that's helpful to you, and I hope you have a good start of your year.